walk me through this. When does the day start? What's your day look like from the morning till midnight? What's the day look like for the Trump family?
Well, listen, guys, remember, outside of politics, and I'm heavily involved in politics, I also run a big company. So my day starts early, and we're not much, we're not big sleepers in our family. My father's not a big sleeper. I'm not a big sleeper. I'm normally a 5 a.m. guy, go to the gym, get to it, very, very early and, getting very late. And the last 2 nights we've come in at 1 o'clock in the morning and, come back from big fundraisers, big events. I was with him all over Georgia, North Carolina. I've been doing events all over the country. And so, no, guys, not a lot of sleep now between, obviously, kind of campaign schedule and, the final, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, 12 days. And then obviously, the company, we've got some of the greatest hotels all over the world and golf courses and residential buildings, commercial buildings, literally on every corner of the globe. And so not a whole lot of sleep in our family.
And you're the EVP, right? You're the EVP of the entire organization.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Okay, so question with you there, because I got 4 kids and, we got businesses that we're running. How was the family conversations when you guys were kids, younger? Yeah. Think 10, 12, 13, 14 years old, 15 years old. Hey, one day you're going to run this and one day you're going to do that. What were those conversations like with Pops?
No, actually, almost the exact opposite of that. We were thrown on construction sites, Don and I, at a very, very young age, right? About 11, started making, less than minimum wage, and I was pulling conduit, and I was doing HVAC work, tile work, concrete work, everything that you can possibly imagine, right? And I loved it, but it was, you're going to work with the stonemasons. These are guys, tough Italian guys. If you wore gloves, they would laugh at you. I mean, it's just, your little prepubescent hands are going to get, work hard in today, little boy. And,
these, so they were tough on you guys.
Oh, these guys were freaking tough.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are no bullshit, right? They're, these are the real deal. These are hardened, tough guys. And, by the way, so many of them still work in the company today and dear friends and worked for us forever. And they're really kind of family of ours. But no, this is real deal stuff. And, if you wanted a fishing rod, guess what? Honey, go out and work for it. Go dig a hole, go learn how to, run backhoes, bulldozers, chainsaws. And it's what we did every single summer. And it was the best thing that ever happened. And so I don't think there was any, hey, when you come into the business, it's work, earn it, and slowly grow your way in the company. And if you're really good at what you do, you can eventually have, the keys. And I don't even think that was stated. It was one of these things that we went out and we busted our butts every single day. And trust me, Donald Trump, right? He's no pushover. If we weren't really good at what we did, if we didn't care, if we didn't work our tail off, we wouldn't be in the seat that we were in. Okay, I mean, there's no way. There's too much riding on it.
Two questions with that. So when I studied the Kennedy family, specifically Joseph Kennedy, right? And even Michael Jordan, when he hears stories about him when he was younger, his older brother, the dad, would pin them against each other, competition. And Michael in The Last Dance, I don't know what scene it was, when he says, when I was a kid and I was going through it, and my dad was saying, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to compete. You just go play outside. Let us grown men do this. And he said, I wanted to kill these guys, right? My own, the level of competition. He says, but I realized I needed to go through that phase of getting my skin to be thick before I became who I was. Was dad doing that, or did he leave it to everybody else to do it?
There was definitely friendly competition between Don, Ivanka, and I. We're closest friends. We're inseparable, right? I mean, we have a really inseparable family. No division, which is actually hard to believe going through the political nonsense, right? I mean, they've done everything they could to kind of break up the family and divide us and pin everybody against each other. But what he was actually remarkable at, he almost took a different approach. He'd give you tasks that were so insurmountable. You realize he kind of laddered them, right? But I was, 24 years old. I'd get thrown into, build that building. And by the way, you're in charge, make good decisions. I'd go to him oftentimes, hey, I've got a problem. What's the answer? And he would kind of talk in a little bit of a circle, but then at the end of his, you figure it out. You figure it out. And don't get me wrong, if I was going to go grossly awry, he would have, course corrected immediately. But he wanted people. For him, it was never about the PhDs. It was never about the resume. It was guys who would go out there and bust their butts, bust their asses, who worked, who had common sense, who people liked, who would go out there and fight. We have people in our company that were literally drivers. They took me to school as a kid, who were general managers of some of the biggest hotels in the country, because these guys always had their hand up. And Donald Trump was always this guy. You keep your hand in the air, right? I mean, driver. We were bringing architects out to Las Vegas when we did our big hotel out there, right? 64 stories on the Strip, right across from the Wynn. Amazing building. Hey, I'll take them out. This driver, I'll take the architects out, no problem. A couple weeks later, we're getting financing and we're going through the whole planning process. Hey, I'll take those bankers out. I'll show them site. I'll take them through the plans that we have. The guy always just had his hand up, and guess what? 15 years later, 20 years later, he's running a several billion-dollar building that's one of the biggest in Las Vegas, and this is a guy who really started as a driver. And it was never about the guys who graduated from Yale and Princeton. It was about the guys who worked hard, who were no BS, who were honest, who were loyal, who always had their hand up, and very different. I mean, and by the way, one other thing. He instilled confidence in people who otherwise might have not had confidence in themselves, and he would build them up. Brian's the greatest. He does the greatest job. This guy works harder than everybody. Everybody loves this guy. You watch, this guy's going to get the project done on time, under budget, and he'd build up their personality where they actually believed in themselves, where otherwise they would have said, "Hey, I'm just not qualified for that." I mean, how many times have you heard that across your life? And when in reality, they were almost the most qualified. In a crazy way. They had the street smarts. They had the now he was a remarkable guy. He's made so many careers, remarkable boss, but you better believe when we were 14 years old, it wasn't, hey, when you take over the company one day, no, go out and dig that damn hole and work for it.
I was in Vermont visiting this insurance company called National Life Group, and it was showing this person's been here for 38 years, this person's been here for 30 years, 28 years. Who are some of the longest standing employees within the organization, and what are the timelines?
Well, if you haven't been in our company for 20 years, you're like a junior, very, very junior paper. I mean, I always say, you make it the first year with us and we love you, you're in for life. And you walk down the hall of our company, every single person, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. I mean, it's a remarkable thing. And so many people who came through, I hate hiring from outside. I hate it. It drives me crazy because you can never learn who a person is on a resume. You just don't. And I'd much rather have somebody that started as a busboy and worked his way into kind of being an F&B director, and then kind of worked his way into assistant general manager, and then you take that person, you put them in another property, they succeed every single time because their heart and soul, their work ethic, I mean, they've just been tested over and over and over, and by the way, they're the people who are most appreciative. I mean, think about the kind of FU it sends throughout corporate culture. When somebody's worked in a company for 15 years and they've rose the ranks, and then you jump ahead of them and you go grab some guy, some stiff from Ritz-Carlton or something along those lines, and you bring them in and you totally jump over them. I try never to do that. And my father was the same way. He always liked hiring from within.
How many people over 20 years, if you were to give a number?
Tens of thousands.
Wow.
I mean, listen, guys, we probably have 6,000-7,000 people in our company right now, right across, and growing awfully quickly. And but people whose careers he's made. I mean, it's remarkable. And by the way, people who would have never otherwise gotten jobs, and this is going to sound a little bit bad, but 1980s, he was giving, very construction, very male-dominated industry in New York. I mean, very few females, and made many of his project managers females. He never gets any credit for that, and they were killers, and they went out and they did unbelievable things and built some, and he was always willing to just give whoever was the best person, whoever had their hand up, whoever would ever be that killer, who would ever work, kind of 24 hours a day to prove themselves. Hey, by the way, welcome in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to have you,
I'm so sorry, Eric. Like this.
Now the audience knows.
Yes.
Now they know.
Eric.
Yes, it's
I mean,
always me.
Adam, Eric is here. He's trying to be professional.
God,
he was
this
early.
guy.
I mean, I'm sorry to the audience.
You would assume he would give some respect.
Some
but
respect.
It is what
I
it
mean,
is.
he came early. The guy's
Allow me to give a little respect then, because I'm going to blame somebody for me being late.
Who?
Your father.
Why?
Because we've been having such an amazing time at Mar-a-Lago the last 2 nights.
Yeah.
I've never been.
A little tired.
And no, I don't drink anymore thanks to this guy. Zero drinking, a lot of YMCAing, a lot of amazing movies, a lot of amazing people. What a place, this Mar-a-Lago, gotta tell you. And my apologies
Put your
for being late.
headset on.
Get your headset on.
Great conversation.
Thank you for being
Don't
here. I've been
interrupt.
listening.
Let us
Yeah.
have the conversation. Going back to it. Okay. So the idea during dinner, because dinner is a lot of, you learn a lot about families during dinner, conversations. So if we were to take 100 dinners and we were to run data to say, what are the top 10 most common conversations that would come up? Is it sports? Which team? Is it movies? Is it music? Is it business? Is it real estate? What were some of the common conversations? Again, when you were a kid, right? I'm not talking 20 plus. I'm talking 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 during that age.
So he's always been a guy who's been myopically, and I think as a family. First of all, great sense of humor, right? We like to laugh. We like to poke fun. I mean, a lot of, kind of shit talk, for lack of a better term, right? Against all of us. And
New Yorkers. You guys are New Yorkers.
Yeah, 100%. You get it, right? But I mean, we're a very, very close family, but we're also a very alpha family, right? Very kind of competitive family. We have a lot of fun, and we're all probably loud in our own ways. Everybody wants the stage. Everybody wants the microphone. So you get a lot of that at our table. It's probably no different than your tables, right? But, I think the conversation always kind of revolved. He was very myopically focused on whatever he was doing at the time, right? In the casino years, in the early years, I mean, he was myopically focused on casinos, right? And everything would be about the casino business and building the casinos. And is Michael Jackson going to show up today? Is Hulk Hogan going to show up today? What event you have, and when that moved later on to the hotels, the golf courses, that became kind of the focus. When we got into The Apprentice, The Apprentice became and it was a certain way of actually, I think maybe, psychologically honing yourself, where you just dig so deep into whatever you want to focus on that it ultimately becomes a success because you're just so impassioned about it. But I think that conversation over the course of time, moved from kind of, from focus to focus. Certainly when we got into politics, real estate became a much smaller conversation at the dinner table. And guess what? It's much more of a political conversation. Can you believe this? Can you believe this nonsense, right? And so it's always how he actually, I think, honed himself and got many of kind of the talking points and kind of, grounded his convictions in whatever he was doing in the moment.
What qualities did he dislike the most? Like, if I'm talking about victimhood, blame, what was it when he's looking at somebody doesn't make it, somebody feels an enemy he goes up against, an opponent, somebody he watches in sports? Were there any qualities, but like, if you want to fail in life, here's the three things.
Yeah, laziness. He had no tolerance for lazy, right? And he could always respect somebody who was a hard fighter on the other side of the table, but as somebody who fought, he always liked the fighter. He never liked the lazy person. He wanted the person to be motivated. I mean, he'll call me in the morning, and I'm an early guy, and I'm kind of a late guy, and honey, it'll be 5:30 in the morning. Honey, are you awake? Yeah, I'm speaking to you. I'm awake. And he'll call me that same night, 11:45. Honey, are you awake? Yeah, I'm awake. And he's called me a couple times, right? It's it's 10:30. You pass out on, honey, did I catch you? You're sleeping. You're not allowed to be sleeping. I'm a guy that gets 4 hours of sleep at night, right? I'm a guy who travels on a plane 210 days a year, and you're literally busting my chops for. But no, he's remarkable. He likes hard workers. He likes people who have passion. And for anything, and I'm the same way. I like people who have, I don't care if you're into knitting. If you are truly passionate about something and you want to be a master of that craft, I just find those people kind of fascinating. He always did too. He's the guy who'd pull up, he would see a stonemason on the side of the road. He'd be building an incredible wall. He'd pull up to him. That's the most incredible stone wall I've ever seen. Is that bluestone? Is that flagstone? Do you believe in dry packing? What kind of concrete do you use? I mean, he's the guy who would always get so myopic, and he would love to dig into the minds of people who are truly kind of, captains of industry. They might not be, captains of industry in the big sense, but people who truly knew their trade and knew that trade better than anybody and were perfectionists. And he always loved those people. It's kind of why I call him sometimes the blue collar billionaire, right? I mean, he always did really well with, go up to that electrician, hey, bud, are we on schedule? Tell me about this job. What's going right? This is the guy that's installing electrical outlet. This isn't the guy that's running the company. He learned more from those guys than he did from certainly any day from the guys who are actually, running those organizations.
How about behind closed doors? You were an apprentice. You've done a lot of deals. You've seen him negotiate. If you were to say a couple things, his go-to when it comes down to negotiations, he'll do X, Y, Z. What is his approach? I mean, I've read Art of the Deal. We've seen some of the stuff he said on The Apprentice, but from your perspective.
Negotiate everything. I mean, he was always a tough negotiator. He was a fair negotiator, but he was a tough negotiator. He's a guy who expected quality. I remember as kids, and really my whole life, and I might actually be worse at this point, to tell you the truth, but we'd be walking through a casino as a little kid. He would stop a caravan of people because he would see a little paint drip on a wall, that was so insignificant that no one would ever point it out, and he would make a spectacle out of it, right? And what that was doing, it was actually it was conditioning people to be perfectionists. Don't have that paint drip, right? Don't have that burnt out bulb. People notice these little details, and it made the teams substantially better. And, it's kind of one of the reasons we have the quality that we do in our company. But so oftentimes I'll show up at our properties, I'll walk through the loading dock. Our lobbies are going to be perfect every single time, but I want to see every mechanical room. I want to make sure that there's no dust on an HVAC system and, kind of a back closet. They've got to be perfectly painted, well lit. They've got to be immaculate. And the way you conduct yourself kind of, back at house is obviously good transfer over the way you interact with guests and, the way you hold yourself. And, but no, he was a perfectionist, and he's, very kind of, OCD in terms of detail, and, tough negotiator, and a guy who really, beyond anything, I think a great cheerleader. And I think you see that in politics, certainly, but, he cheerleads for things that he believes in. I want America to be the greatest country in the world. We're going to have the best economy. We're going to have the lowest taxes. We're going to have the greatest military. Our vets are going to be, put first. We're not going to let these companies rip us off and, screw us all around the world. We're going to renegotiate these deals. China's not going to, get away with murder anymore. But he did that in business as well, right? Turnberry's the greatest golf course. We're building something that's better than anything in the world. And he meant it, right? But he was also willing to say it, all right? He was always a great cheerleader. And frankly, to the political side of this conversation, it's something that I think this country is missing in a big way. We don't have cheerleaders anymore.
I read this book, 38 Letters John D. Rockefeller wrote his son. Incredible book. I mean, you won't be able to put it down. It's insane. And I think it's like chapter 4, for letter 4 or 5, where he says, Dear John, I have some terrible news to give you today. Mr. Benson, my greatest rival, died today. And he goes through the whole story, right? Who were some of your father's greatest rivals that you've seen?
Oh, wow. He's had a lot of rivals over the years,
Of
right?
course,
I mean,
yeah.
going into the casino world, all the casinos were rivals because they were all competing over, obviously, a very limited amount of licenses. You go into New York, everybody wanted the trophy sites. And so you name it, both individuals and kind of, public companies. I mean, real estate's cutthroat. I mean, it's incredibly cutthroat. And so, I think in a certain way, it actually kind of mastered the craft going into to politics. What I will say is as cutthroat as real estate is, it's a pittance compared to politics, right? Because you can have two people that are fundamentally, not aligned, meaning in terms of beliefs. You could have Bernie Sanders and you could have Donald Trump. But in a capitalist world, they'll work together to create the greatest product, to do it better than anybody, to compete, harder. And they can align themselves. In a political world, they can't, right? It's power is become so corrupting in this country that, I think it's why you see kind of political rivalries that are so much more fierce than you could ever probably see in a capitalistic world. Two capitalists can come together for the reason of, again, capitalism. Nancy Pelosi will never give up her power. She'll never give up that, incredible white marble office. She wants to hold on to that in perpetuity, right? And that power becomes very corrupting. And I think that's why you truly see kind of these rivalries, the competition in politics that's unlike anything that you probably see in the commercial space.
Well, you see that. I mean, but publicly, who were some of the ones that you would say? I'm talking specific like business. Were there, like NFL when he was trying to, buy a team, the Buffalo Bills, or was it win the licensing in Las Vegas?
Certainly, Carl Icahn was probably a great competitor. It's certainly win because they competed against each other. And what's funny is, he's dear friends with Carl now, right? He's dear friends with Steve. Certainly, went in, tried to buy the Buffalo Bills, and probably the NFL and kind of the powers to be there. And every developer in New York, whether it be the Relateds, and again, these guys are all our best friends now. But that's just the way of the world. It's no different than you compete against other media outlets every single day, and many of them are your friends. But listen, life is cutthroat, especially in that world. New York real estate was tough, and frankly, you're competing against contractors as well. Who oftentimes have limited supply, and you need to convince them to do your projects versus others. In that world, you're in competition with everyone.
Will there ever be a time where you're saying these rivals, Hillary Clinton will be a best friend? Will there ever come a time where you guys will be going to dinner as a family and Chelsea's sitting there and Bill's sitting there? You say, hey, what do you think about the Yankees, Dodgers? You think that day will be in the future?
I think very few. There are people I have tremendous respect for on the other side of the aisle. Georgina Bloomberg, great girl. Unbelievable girl. And obviously, he ran against my father and, he spent $2 billion, I think. I don't think he got one delegate. It's funny. Actually, he did. He got Guam. And actually, if you took the $2 billion he spent on the race, he could have bought all the private real estate in Guam and had the vote, and he could have owned it. I always found that. But Georgina's an amazing girl. I can never say anything bad about her. And there are people on that side of the aisle. Listen, absolutely. It does become deeply personal with Kamalas when they're coming out calling you Hitler and fascist, right? It's kind of hard. It's different if two people are competing for a site on 57th and 5th, and somebody's willing to pay $30 million, and the next guy's willing to pay $31 million, and you lose the thing, right? It's hard to have animosity towards something when they literally spend the last 10 years trying to throw me in jail for doing nothing wrong. I've never gotten so much as a speeding ticket. I think it's a lot harder to mend that kind of relationship, if that makes sense.
You guys are in New York. Were the Trumps Yankees or Mets? I mean, is it
He's
a
a
Yankee family?
Of course, we're Yankees.
Okay,
Yankees,
so
baby.
tell us some stories about Steinbrenner going to the suites. Who's there? Did you see some of the greats? Who were in the suites?
All right, let me tell you, I've got the greatest Steinbrenner story. So he loved my father, and my father loved him. And he was, by the way, you want to talk about an ultimate competitor? This guy was like the ultimate competitor. Great family, great everything. And so I used to go to the games, and you'd have, Joe DiMaggio. I remember this, right? He'd always kind of be sitting there, oftentimes by himself. You had Giuliani.
Interesting.
You'd Henry Kissinger, and I guess he was just a massive Yankees fan, but I remember Henry Kissinger in the box all the time, and then it was like my father and I. Oftentimes, you had a lot of empty seats in the boxes, because obviously Steinbrenner took this seriously. This was not like an entertainment party. I remember you'd see these great batters, right, and they would strike out. They were batting, 320 or whatever it was. And you would literally have Steinbrenner go grab the red phone in the big box, and he would call out to the dugout, "I want that mother effer gone. He's no freaking
Oh my
good.
God.
We pay this guy too much." You'd have like Jeter, right? I mean, Jeter's up at bat. He screws up one time. He doesn't hit. Yeah, I want that damn guy gone. He's no freaking good.
Oh my God.
And it was beautiful, right? I mean, I don't think I figured out the game of life back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was just instilling excellence in these people, right? And he demanded perfection. And you looked at the Yankees' streak over that period of time. I mean, they won every second. They were unstoppable. And you want to talk about a home team, but he was a tough cookie. I mean, he was a tough cookie. And God bless, I love that. And in so many ways, I see my father in him. I think it's one of the reasons that they kind of got along. Expected perfection. Tough as hell. And it was a beautiful thing. I mean, I don't think there's many team owners in history that even remotely rival to what Steinbrenner did. It's
maybe Jerry Buss on the NBA side. He won 10 in 33 years, but not
27.
Jerry was not but 27 is all time.
Yeah, of course.
This guy did 10 and 33, but Jerry wasn't the personality that Steinbrenner was.
Oh, of course.
Steinbrenner was made for TV. Yeah. I mean, some of the stuff that he was amazing.
Oh, by the way, and they would have, or you remember the old clips. I mean, they would zoom in on the box, and they would have him on the phone. He's shouting into the phone, and they'd have the split screen of the poor general manager at the time who's just getting reamed out. I mean, he's batter. The guy was batting like 319 or whatever the hell it is, and he's reaming the guy out because he didn't make one play. It was a remarkable thing, whereas most of the owners would be up in the box kind of clapping. Okay, better luck next time, buddy, right? And I mean, he just kept that constant pressure, and it was an amazing thing to watch as a kid. Again, I'm not sure I fully understood the game at the time. I was too young. But kind of looking back, I mean, I remember those moments vividly, and he was just a remarkable owner.
Wow, is there a prediction for Yankees-Dodgers?
Well, of course I'm going to go with Yankees.
Okay.
Come on.
All right. Well, we're excited to see what happens. Tonight it ends at midnight. I just want to remind everybody. Next week we're running a sweepstake for next week. The big game next week, Game 5 in New York against LA, October 30th. And this is what we're doing for every dollar spent on merch. VTmerch.com. We got 15 new hats. This is officially the #1 selling new hat that came about. We got a bunch of other ones there. The polo shirts are going left and right, but for every dollar you spend on merch, up to $1,000, it will go into sweepstakes. And then tomorrow we will pull a name, and one of you will be joining us next Wednesday, October 30th at Game 5. And we're excited about it, but it ends tonight, Tom, if I'm not mistaken, at midnight. Do you have any other thing? And by the way, we'll get you one ticket. You'll be with us, one seat when you join us. And on top of that, $2,500 for flight and room. And Tom, maybe if you got any other thing to add to it.
No purchase necessary for the PBD Podcast 2024 Baseball Sweepstakes, sponsored by Valuetainment and open only to legal residents of the United States and District of Columbia, 18 years and older. Entry deadline again tonight, October 25th at 11:59, midnight tonight. For full entry and rules, visit VTmerch.com, where you can buy the merchandise. $1 spent, one entry in the contest, up to $1,000 spent. And you can also find it in the description for this episode of the podcast, found on the PBD Podcast channel on YouTube. Void where prohibited by law.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.